Welcome to The One Inside, an internal family systems podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Sollenberger. I'm excited that you and all of your parts have taken time to be with me and all of my parts. If you are a coach, a client, a therapist, if you are in business or education, and you're curious about the IFS model, you are in the right place. Now, let's see what happens on today's podcast. Hey everyone. On today's episode, I speak with Marilyn Unger-Riepe. Marilyn and I chat about what she calls AM-IFS, which stands for Authentic Movement and IFS. AM-IFS is something that Marilyn has been bringing to us at the IFS annual conference for the past few years. She's held workshops there, and then she also holds workshops in her hometown of Sudbury, Massachusetts. I've had a couple of these experiences with Marilyn, and we've become friends, which you could tell because we're just sort of kind of all over the place as we talk today. She's wonderful, and I love her so much, and I hope you guys will too. I think that you will. I think you'll get a sense of just her passion and how amazing this experience is, and I'm hoping that you will just learn so much, and I'm hoping that you will practice it. It's an experience, so there wasn't a lot to write. Like when I write the show notes, and I usually have like a couple of these, like, okay, these are like 5 things you're going to learn, or here's some points. And I thought, it's really more of her and I explaining this experience. So go listen, enjoy this one. I think it's great. And I love Marilyn. I think you're going to love her too. As we talk about authentic movement and IFS. Hope everybody's doing okay. Enjoy.
I'm Marilyn Unger-Riepe. Hi.
Hi.
I'm a dance therapist and I'm a clinical social worker. And it really all comes, and an IFS trained therapist. And it all comes together with this, what I'm going to speak about, which is, I call it AM-IFS, Authentic Movement, Internal Family Systems, these workshops and groups that I love to lead and to give to people in the world, and feel so moved by what things that they get from it that I didn't even know. I think it's beautiful to witness it and to see things in the room, and then it just reverberates to people when you and it's really about witnessing. I think it's really the power of being witnessed in an embodied way.
If you were to look out your nearest window, what would you see?
Well, it's a beautiful day, and my home has a lot of natural light, and it brings the outside in. My husband is an architect, and I am blessed with him having designed this space we live in. And I feel particularly blessed. Every day I appreciate it, but particularly blessed during this time when people are sheltering in place.
Yeah.
I have this place that is so expansive.
Yeah.
And the light that comes in, and I see the trees. I'm right here in my living room, and I'm with spring and the trees. So
yeah, you're outside, but it looks like you're inside. I mean, you're
the other way.
Yeah, right. It is beautiful. I can see do you have skylights?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's beautiful. It does make a big difference. I'm sure. I'm out I'm like in the wilderness. I'm not in the wilderness, but I'm around a lot of trees. It makes a big difference that we're able to just walk out and take a walk, and it does make a big difference.
Right. And of course the trees heal us, and they're living beings as well. And there's all of that. But
yeah, right.
They have movement.
I love that. Okay, trees have movement.
Yep.
I love that.
And they're living. And they help each other, as there's in biology, they look out for each other, and it's a kind of amazing thing how we're all connected. authentic movement, internal family systems. That's what I call these workshops that I lead and what I want to share with people, because I feel when I lead these groups, I am blown away by the profound healing that I experience, that people experience, and lifts me up in being witness to that. And I want to tell people about it. What I would like to do is offer some way for people to experience this while they're at this time at home in this period of isolation and feeling this, separation. From themselves, not separation from themselves, but people are so frightened and there's so much chaos and uncertainty in the world.
Yeah.
And if we can center ourselves through our bodies, and if we can, and that can happen by being witnessed by another, that we are not alone. And so I am thinking of vehicles to do that will work during this time, and then this will not be forever, and then I want to bring people into the workshops. And
I like that what you just said, though, that idea that being separate from ourselves, and we know that we're not separate from our capital S selves, but we are feeling that because we're not able to. I was thinking about this the other day. Like my nervous system, I feel like is always jacked up. It's always activated because I'm never dropping down. I'm never like walking from my car to my office. I'm never driving from dropping the boy off to school to driving to my office. I'm not taking a lunch break where I can walk around town or go get a mani-pedi. Like that's not happening.
Well, right. The firefighters are up for me anyway. I mean, I've been my latest joke I like is that it's not that funny, but that I'm in quarantine with my exiles. Help.
I love that you say that because I think that's the truth. And it is funny, which I really appreciate humor in the middle of this craziness. But I think that is truth because we are in quarantine with our exiles because we spend a lot of time, our protectors spend a lot of time keeping us distance from them.
And functioning in ways that we don't have to deal with them all the time without that structure. Authentic movement is a practice. I mean, it's probably been around since the dawn of time, actually, when people witnessed, primitive cultures, shamanism and healing through dance and movement, when people felt seen and were able to express themselves. This originated about 70 years ago. There was a founder, Mary Stark Whitehouse. She was a Jungian patient and probably teacher and a dancer. And she wanted people to feel, there's a practice of active imagination, and she applied that to the body and moving, where people could feel more enlivened and touch deep inside themselves through their body. It began there, and then it was Janet Adler took up the mantle, and she is the leading guide. This is her life's work, and basically she's developed the practice. Here is how the practice works. There's a mover and there's a witness. And the mover moves with her or his eyes closed. In a meditative way, the tension goes inside to feel how your body is moving and what comes up from that. But key to that is the dyad of the witness. Because the mover is moving and there is a witness, a compassionate witness that's holding the space. She's holding the space with love, she's a non-judgmental presence. And she's also, it's a meditative process with her attention on the mover, just accepting and taking in how the mover's moving, what that brings up in her, and really feeling that. I ask them to, the mover, I ask the mover to go inside and follow either a sensation in their body, or an image that may come up in their mind's eye, or an emotion, whatever, that just to go inside and notice, just to take a noticing, and then follow their breath and move with it. And there's no right or wrong. There's something about being seen and felt by the witness that allows that focus. That, in a way, that's reminiscent of early attachment, because you're being felt and seen, like your early caregivers. The attachment is about the infant and the parent in feeling. The infant feels the rhythmicity of each other, and at those moments of meeting where the infant feels held, physically held, yes, but also in that nonverbal primary language. There's an understanding. So there's a lot of potential for healing that. And there's also, by and large, there's a rush of self-compassion. If you are moving and there's this compassionate witness holding it, that is an IFS language, self-bringing self. And then that helps your parts to feel compassion. That helps to bring self-energy on board and parts to feel compassion. Now, I know it sounds kind of like woo-woo and magical, but it's in the body, so it's really true, and I've seen it over and over. Now, sometimes it also, this process, it isn't always this rush of self-compassion, but there is enough compassion that the focus allows parts to come forth and speak through the body. So things emerge with the witnessing. That's very, well, it's powerful. So the part, if the part feels that witnessing, then, all the parts that interfere with it being expressed can step back, and the part can really feel healed, and the part feels witnessed. Not by if the outer witness helps that, but the outer witness brings on the ability for the self's inner witness.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
The mover's inner witness is able to come forth, having that scaffolding of the outer witness. And in the groups, you're creating a community of witnessing and being held. That is one of the reasons that I am so riveted by doing the work. And I love leading groups. I mean, I've been doing this I've actually been leading groups for 40 years, since my early training as a dance therapist. And then I've worked for years and years with groups with pregnant women and new mothers, and many groups and movement groups, actually.
Well, how long have you been leading? I have two things, and I don't want to forget to say them. One is, how long have you been leading groups for?
For IFS?
Yes.
About 7 years, I think, since 2013.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah. And I've been doing it, all over the metropolitan area. I actually did lead a group and did a workshop in Hawaii. I mean, I was there and I was asked to do it.
The thing that was coming up for me when you were talking about the group and the witness was the idea of safety, because that's the thing that I think is huge for you, and is about, you're not going to, you probably, your parts aren't going to like this very much, but that's something that you really provide. And I think that really helps people drop down, is there's a sense of safety, whether it's, I mean, I've experienced this with you, whether it's one-on-one with you or in a group workshop. I mean, I went to a workshop with all these strangers, and it was immediately warm and safe. And it's like, it's not just about like what's happening on the inside with myself and my parts, or what's happening with myself and my witness's self, but it's also what's happening with all these groups of people, and that what you're doing to create this safe space.
My parts love that, Tammy, because they
Good.
feel so seen.
Oh, good.
Because
Good.
that is what I don't want to brag about it, and for you to bring that out, it seems to be pretty much what everybody says and what I know is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult for people to jump in and do something like that if
Yeah.
they've never done it,
Yeah.
and it's always a little bit of a risk. I mean, and so whatever all that I am comes together in helping people to feel safe to do that. And
Yeah.
I guess that's what I love, is that I can create that sacred space where people feel safe and they can really dive down
Yeah.
and into their parts and do transformative work.
Mm.
And it, because the body, it's just more honest and real and deeper in the body, because that's where the intelligence begins.
Mm.
The brain sits on top of that, but it begins with the body. And in our culture, we've always been we intellectualize. You can make meaning with words. The knowing begins with the body, and to have a place where that's honored and allowed is so for healing, is so powerful for healing, and
Yeah.
why I love it. And I love it's so beautiful. The people, maybe it self-selects who comes, but
Mm.
I don't know, because I don't know. I think it does a kind of a magic, and I am see as kind of my life's work to facilitate that.
Why don't we start talking about how you see the natural marriage between authentic movement and IFS?
Basically, I mean, the most important thing in this connection is that witnessing is central to both the practice of authentic movement and all the healing that that brings and the awarenesses. And it's central to the healing in IFS. It's a deeper, more embodied witnessing. And IFS is an embodied practice. I mean, it honors how do you feel the part in your body. It definitely brings the body in. The practice of authentic movement, IFS, AM-IFS, expands that with the outer witness bringing on your own inner witness. That's really the magic in it.
Well, and it also sounds like part of the other magic is the embodying. It feels like it's an unblending. Like another parallel might be the unblending and the embodiment. And then when that happens, the witnessing is like almost like more powerful. Like if I have focused and fleshed out, if I've done the two F's, then I have a clearer sense of a part. So then the witnessing is more powerful. So if I'm embodying a part with movement, then the witnessing done by me and by my witness is more powerful.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the magic.
Yeah.
And it does, I've seen people, I've witnessed people in the group, they have said a couple of times, I just had a spontaneous unburdening. It's fast in that way because it's direct.
Hmm.
When you're embodied and also in connection, the connection is more authentic. It's body to body.
Right.
So,
Right. Hmm. When you
so
said to one time to me that your body isn't going to lie, like your body is going to tell. Yeah. Do you want to say more about that?
yes, the body doesn't, it can't lie. It doesn't lie. Therein lies the truth. And I have a quote by Alan Shore, the neuropsychologist. And what happens is that it just can be very supported, all that happens, by the theories in neuroscience, because it's the mirror neurons, it's the parasympathetic. When you're in connection and feel safe, then the parasympathetic comes on board. That's what makes for connection and self. That is self. When the parasympathetic, the calming,
Mm,
comes together,
yeah.
then self is there. So
Yeah.
they're kind of interchangeable.
Yeah.
And I just feel that this vehicle creates that in a very efficient way, and it also creates community when I said body to body. Let me read what I had for what Alan Shore. The right brain hears the music, not the words of what passes between people. So that's the profound simplicity of it. The movement is the right brain, and all the feelings and all the connections. Of course, you have a left brain, but it's not leading. You start out and you feel self-conscious and you have all these parts talking about, oh my God, can I do this? When that drops down. I mean, all parts are welcome. It's not a right or wrong. This is
Right.
describing what is sort of germane to why it's so healing.
Right. Right.
In the process, okay, we have the mover, the witness, we're back at that. It can take, if I start people off, I give them like 5 minutes because that helps them just to feel the safety and start to move. In the workshops, it can extend to 30 minutes, longer.
Okay, so now we're talking about the time and sort of how it works. So sometimes you say, like, so when you and I met, we would just do sort of 5 minutes, but sometimes you would say, okay, you're going to do 10 minutes, and then
That's
you would ring a bell. So we do like a meditation, and then we do the movement, and then, but there would be a specific amount of time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's a safety frame as well.
Yeah,
And
right.
then I ring the bell. Yeah, I started with a bell. I ended with the bell. And after that, the dyad continues between the mover and witness. That's when we bring in speaking.
Hmm.
And then the left brain comes in to integrate the right brain.
Right.
And the mover speaks first. Always the mover speaks first about his or her experience.
Yeah.
And the witness, and it's a very disciplined structure. The witness doesn't talk during that time. They are kind of meditating and really attending to what the mover is speaking of her experience. And then I ring the bell, and then the witness shares. That requires also a certain discipline, because the witness doesn't analyze. The witness just tries to show up in a way that speaks to her experience of what she felt about experiencing the mover.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
And that's also very healing, because that also I've never had that not feel like it resonated for the mover.
Yeah.
And that amplifies again the feeling of being seen and held and witnessed.
Yeah.
Now, there are other structures. Sometimes before people talk, I have them draw to stay in the right brain. That's very helpful. Sometimes it takes time for words to form, or draw or write poetry. Just words come out. But also, this is what is a sort of more intuitive primary process, and then speak. But the mover speaks, and then I bring the group together. And that's sort of this, but there are many, many structures. That's just the simplest. There's many things that I do and can do. I have ones where the witness reads to the mover words they said, and then she moves to that. And I mean, there's just a lot of.
Oh, that's a neat idea.
There are great ideas, and it just keeps deepening that sense of being seen and felt.
It also sounds like it keeps connecting to the right brain. It keeps you out of the logic and out of the words when you're using art, or you're using colors or collages or drawing to heighten that experience too.
It's all about connection. That connection to each other is solidified, and it helps. And then that brings on, what comes first. Yeah, and then that helps everyone to feel, each person to feel more connected inside to themselves and their parts. The outer witness, what that does, it allows the mover's inner witness to come alive, to emerge. So that's really the power, the mover's inner witness.
Yeah.
And to me, that's central to both the practice of IFS and the practice of authentic movement. And if you've worked with Dick or any seasoned practitioner, really, but Dick, he isn't an inquiry. When you're with a witness, he will ask, as the self, are you looking at the part or are you with the part?
Mm.
This is not a looking at. So what Janet Adler says also, and Dick, both of them, the difference between looking versus being with one's part. I mean, she's talking about that's a witness. So the being with, inside yourself, with your part, which is, as I said, amplified by the structure of having another. And the work is about knowing you're not alone. And that's what self knows, because the part, when self is there, you're not alone.
Mm.
In these groups, you're also feeling the community, because as you're connecting to yourself, you're connecting to each other. And that's what happens in all of the IFS trainings.
Mm.
You establish the connection to part, and that's all amplified by the others. The community that's created through the trainings that emphasize that is healing in the world.
Mm.
And I feel that this is just an extension of that. It's another form that happens in these workshops. And when you're really connected in a visceral way to each other, non-judgmental compassion, and the compassion comes on in yourself, I see that as a model for healing the world. Dick would say the same thing. I mean, that it starts within self. When self has compassion and you're leading from that place, change can happen. And we're living, this is a tragic, horrifying moment, terrifying in the world, and it has to transform. AM-IFS are all tools that can help facilitate that, and we need all of that we can get.
Yeah.
And we need each other. In my experience with authentic movement, it has always, I thought, brought on a sort of rush of self-compassion. When I had practiced it for many years, this is before I knew about IFS, when I was just a dance therapist. But when I practiced it, I was sort of blown away by this self-compassion that I felt, having had this other person with me, witnessing me. It was astonishing and revelatory, because my critic went away.
Wow.
Moment.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was like, wow.
Yeah.
It was a whole different frame.
Yeah.
And I was also aware that sometimes it did come from the speaking, from the witness. I just have this anecdote that I remember in a group workshop. I had been really lethargic, and it was in the morning, and and I'm always was mad at myself because I would have this lethargy. I mean, I still get, critic was like, lazy. And so I was flopping on the floor. I mean, I hardly moved, but I would just take an arm and flop it and bring it back. And I was just expressing that fatigue or fogginess. And my witness, when she shared what she felt seeing it, she said, sleeping giant. I was like,
Wow.
oh my God. I mean, I thought I was a lazy jerk and always mad. I couldn't be doing the things I wanted to do. And so I'm a critic beating up on myself. I didn't know that word, but I was familiar with the concept.
Yeah.
When she said that, I also knew that was in me. Like, she saw some potential.
Oh, wow.
And she saw the light, it was a whole reframe. And so that was sort of like, wow, this is something so healing. And I was a therapist at that point. Yeah, I was a dance therapist and a practicing therapist. And I just thought, I gotta share this.
And I want to say that someone who does have lots of body image critics, and who can often be cut off from my body, I have found this experience. You and I have met twice. I went to your workshop. heavens, that feels like a year ago, but I think it was the beginning of this year. And then I did a practice with you, I think a year or
It was in
two.
February. It's
Oh my
February.
gosh, February. That feels like a year ago. So I've done this I think maybe 4 or 5 times I've had this experience with you. I did my first experience though was at the annual conference when you guys did something at night. You
Oh,
guys did something at night, and I would have never gone, but my friend Kathy, who I love, hi Kathy, so we went together, and I was like, "There's no way because I can't. I feel so self-conscious. I feel so uncomfortable in my body. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this. I felt embarrassed. I felt I don't want someone looking at my body. Like I had all of that stuff coming up, and probably, I mean, maybe 30 seconds in, all of that was gone. Like, so I guess I just want listeners to know that is if they're considering doing something like this or maybe coming to one of your workshops, that was really true for me. And it's not like I don't have any body critics up because I have lots of them. Basically, what happens is you've got one person, you do a little bit of a meditation. One person is the dancer. Their eyes are shut,
or
and
mover. I don't
or
want
the mover, not dancer, mover. And they begin to just start moving their body. One of the ways I remember in the February workshop, so you have someone that's moving and then you have someone that's witnessing, this non judgmental witness. And I remember in the February workshop, I was about to go on vacation with my family and I was feeling like I needed a lot of space. And so I think at the beginning, I remember wanting to push people away, thinking about like, my mom was going to
to.
be there and my husband was going to be there, my kid, and I just thought it's going to be too much. And I remember immediately just starting to kind of push people away, and then so I'm literally just using my hands right now and I'm just pushing away. And then I remember feeling like I didn't actually want to push them away. I wanted to just bring in more space for myself. And so then I started kind of using my hands to bring in more light and more self. And I didn't feel the need to push them away. I could actually have them next to me. And it was all happening in my body. Like my mind wasn't thinking, which is amazing to me, right? My mind wasn't planning ahead or thinking, oh, if I don't have to push them away. Like none of that was happening. It was all happening in my body. And it was like quick and deep. And it was like, probably weekly therapy wouldn't have gotten me there. A month of weekly therapy wouldn't have gotten me there so fast.
Right. I mean, that's the power of it. You were amazing. I mean, because you did. I mean, everybody. I am always in awe of the work of the once people drop down of what they can, what places that they can go, and the thing. It was almost like you had an unburdening. I mean, I wouldn't.
What
Yeah.
had that kind of power to it. Like I left having that feeling to it. Yeah, I definitely had that intense lightness and relief.
So the way that I link that to IFS is that when parts feel, how you always, when a part feels witnessed,
Yeah,
really, really witnessed. I mean, that you have to, establish that self to part relationship is so crucial
yeah,
if there's going to be some kind of an unburdening or just unblending.
yeah. I guess I want to ask you how you think that not the witness mover, but the witness of your parts and yourself in your body, how that happens differently when you're moving your body.
Okay, so it's the witness that helps me or to be able to then go deeper inside and witness myself because there's a structure, there's a bound, I'm held.
Yeah.
So the witness is there because I am aware of that person too. So it kind of holds me and holds my attention, but not in a self-conscious way, after a few seconds.
Yeah.
It allows me to go deeper inside myself. And then then I feel my movement. And that brings me a kind of truth that that wouldn't have been accessible just in my head.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
The
Yes,
body
exactly.
doesn't
Yeah.
lie. The body doesn't lie. the neurons are all connected to your body and the mirror neurons. And even though you're not seeing that other person, that's activated because you're feeling their presence that holds you. So the parts then can begin to separate. I used to think that, I just want to say to everybody to do a kind of disclaimer, but when I started that, I was in this I don't know, honeymoon about self-compassion will come right away. You do this, self-compassion. And it pretty much, it often does, but actually that takes a couple of rounds sometimes, because what it does is allow the parts to separate. You're more able to, as your witness, the part needs to be witnessed and heard. So it could be a grieving part, a very painful, which doesn't mean it's not self-compassion, but at first the part has the opportunity to really show up and be felt and heard. It isn't just, we're not off to la la land on the first pass. I mean, sometimes that happens and people unburden and they get that a lot of the times.
Yeah.
But also a part can show up that you hadn't really wanted to look at that closely, and that's okay, because it's given the safety of being held. I mean, there is some because there's the self of the witness.
Right. Okay. So you said to me the last time we met, because something came up for me the last time we met, and you said to me that might not have happened. It's because of the self, because we've talked about that, the powerful things that can happen when you're in a group of like IFS people and this like self is there and it feels a little more potent, that like
Yes,
the self, yourself is able to help me and myself and my parts, actually the safety of I'm like, I'm not completing any of my sentences, but something about yourself.
for me. Yeah, go on.
Okay, good. I'm like, you're following me, good. So it was like yourself really helped my parts do some work that I don't think could have been done with just me
That's right.
moving in my kitchen by myself.
Right. I mean, not that people shouldn't try that, and that could be
Sure.
beneficial.
Right.
I always need I need somebody there as an anchor, as a witness. I do.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's also, I think of it as self brings self when there's self in the room. I also think of self as presence, because the
Mm,
witness is non-judgmental. It's not like somebody looking at you. It's somebody being with you
yeah.
and really seeing you. And the other thing about it that I just want to add in my other part of the theory is that it reaches into early attachment issues that we all have, to be really felt on a physical plane just by moving. Well, that's what the caretaker does with the infant. The infant picks up the mother, not the mother or the father's rhythmicity, and that's how it's not just they're held, but that's also how they're understood, because that's our primary language, and we're always in our heads. So the other good thing is it takes you out of that. I mean, not completely, but
Right.
you're felt in this visceral, physical way. You're held, and I feel that has enormous potential for healing exiles, our early young wounded parts.
Yeah.
And it's astonishing, how just that physical connection of really being seen and paid attention to in that way is so healing and empowering.
Okay, so we have these attachment wounds, and then we can heal those parts when self is with those early, our younger parts. There's this healing of those attachments, the attachment wounds. And so then
They have
there's that,
self now, yeah.
what? Say that again?
Because they have self, that they're
They have
not.
self now. Yes, right. So inside, those parts of me have self now, and then there's healing of those attachment ruptures and wounds. But what's happening with the movement and the witnessing is now there's an outside witness, and that person's self is then helping my parts feel some attachment, connection, and
Right.
healing. So it's happening, like doubly happening in those moments.
Right. The young parts get, well, it's because the young parts get to be felt on a visceral, physical, they're followed. And they're,
Oh, wow. Okay.
but I'm just to read you this quote from that so this is Mary Ainsworth. She's an attachment person. I don't know what, I mean, and
Guru. She's an attachment guru.
well, she's old. It's not current, but it's not the current neuroscience. This goes way back. But she says movement is our first language. Okay. Our earliest attachments are formed through the felt presence of our caregivers' bodies. The quality of nonverbal communication in the attachment relationship determines the infant's security and insecurity.
Wow. What do you think that means for authentic movement?
I think that the potential, I think that's a little bit absolute. I don't want parents to think, geez, my nonverbal, sometimes I was kind of exhausted and, do you really want to pick the baby up? I did. It isn't so black and white as that.
Right.
I mean, I think that mostly you get enough. I mean, some don't, but that's what that says to me about authentic movement is that it touches when you're in that rhythmic, when somebody's feeling your body and with you, not, but somebody's accepting it and seeing it and validating. I mean, you just might flail your arm around it. It isn't about performance. It's about your soul is seen in movement. I mean, it's about your soul is felt in movement, seen, felt, and you're accepted. And you might not say to people, you don't really have to move either. I mean, sometimes as I was, you just be lying there, but you're being felt and seen with it in an embodied way. And that's the connection.
Yeah.
Is through the body. And the spaces where you weren't sort of validated, you get to drink in some more of that and feel that security.
Right. And that's the attachment healing that you're
Right.
talking about. Yeah.
And I don't want to be too grandiose about it. I mean, but because it's reminiscent of that and it touches on that and it brings potential for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you said it's not someone looking at you, it's someone being with you. And that's what our parts want from us,
Right.
right? They don't want us necessarily to fix it. They want us
To be with it.
to be with. And that's what witnessing is, right? It's witnessing or with them.
Right. I mean, this is from Mary Stark Whitehouse. I have this. There is that in us which has moved from the very beginning. It is that which will liberate us. So she's saying the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very primal. It's very primal, and it's exiles that are being held.
Yeah. Do you find that in the movement, the protectors, I'm guessing protectors then are able to relax a little bit more?
Right, because because they feel held and safe.
I think there's a part of me that worries if I embody anger, then I'm going to stay angry. If we look at fear or we embody anger, these sort of scary, more big, scary feelings. It, and as soon as that's witnessed, it actually relaxes. And then we can get to some other deeper work.
Because the angry part was witnessed, because I was really able to witness it. I mean, who the hell wants to stay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fear and the anger, and we don't really want to stay with that. I don't want to stay with that, but I'll whine about it or whatever. I'll try, no, and I'll try to get I'll try to talk about it and get it heard and try to calm down from that. It never helps. I mean, it does. I mean, it's a catharsis, and
Yeah.
you're not alone.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that it never helps. It does something, but it doesn't do unblending. It doesn't unblend it, which allows self, because then self can enter the body. Yeah, enters the room, and then you have the witness to self, yourself, and it's just so beautiful. And then there's the connection between the witness and the mover. After the mover moves, the witnesses. Then there's a time of processing. The mover always speaks first of his experience. And there's no interrupt, you don't interrupt in the middle. That's a discrete amount of time. The mover, just so that the mover can connect words, you come back into from primary process, just into, that's an old shrinky word, but it's important, which is, that just goes, right into the body without words. And then you bring words to it, which make meaning of it. They're not a bad thing to integrate the intellectual, with the physical and primary process, imaginative experience.
Yeah.
And it's in your whole self. And then after the mover speaks, then the witness shares what they felt seeing you. And it's also very difficult working with therapists because you're not supposed to analyze it, because that's too removed.
Yeah.
And so it's just what it felt for you when you saw that. And that's very validating, actually, as it turns out.
So I want to speak as when I was in the workshop and I was witnessing for the first time. So a couple things happened for me, if I remember this right, is that I always want to talk, which isn't super surprising, but I wanted to say something. And I also do that as a mover. Like it takes me, like, again, probably about maybe 10 seconds where I actually want to talk. Like what, and then so that's kind of hard for me, but that
So,
goes away pretty fast. But anyways, as a witness, what came up for me was I wanted a part that wanted to analyze it, a part that wanted to know what or why or what was happening or what was the story behind it, and then a part that wanted to fix it or help. And so I was noticing all of that really fast. And then this, maybe myself kind of said, none of that is helpful to her right now. See if you can just be with her. And then I could felt myself drop down and just be with her. And I almost found myself kind of moving, like flowing with her body a little bit. And
sure,
that helped my mind settle. And then I'm just going to just be with. And that was huge for me. And because in that moment, that happened pretty fast for me, but that's probably what happens for me when I'm being a therapist or when I'm talking to my friend or
right.
even how I relate to myself and my parts and how my parts relate to each other. So I thought that was fascinating as a witness that I learned that and had that experience.
Well, you were unblended from the parts that were, wanting to do all that. You very quickly unblended. It's very powerful. The whole,
Yeah.
because you're with each other, and you did, yeah, and you had this duty,
Yeah.
that you take, but it was an act of love because you're giving. It's really giving,
Mm.
and
Well, and there's a part of me that's like, isn't that amazing that the love actually comes from me not doing anything, just being with? Like being with is more loving than fixing or helping or analyzing.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
on one level we say "dur," but we
Yeah,
don't.
right. I know.
No, no,
Duh. Yeah.
but no, that's not how our minds work or how we're trained. Yes,
Yeah.
so it's a wonder. I think that meditators would get that kind of, but
Right.
because it's a very meditative process.
Yeah.
It's rooted in that too. It's not separate from that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's counterintuitive for us in our culture.
Well, the other thing is that I was surprised at how fast, because I think the last time we met, I had, a full day, and then I was going 100 miles an hour, and then I was like, okay, but it was and I moved first, and it was amazing how I was able to shift really quickly into a part that was dealing with this COVID-19 and like changing family dynamics with just all of us being home together, and um and I really connected with an exile that I was not aware of. And I went from busy manager driven me That's I went from that to that very quickly. It was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. And then later that day, I haven't told you this, but later that day, I was like, okay, I really want to bring some curiosity to this. Oh, the other thing about that was you were the witness and you said some things to me after that deepened my experience
Right.
about early attachment and that part being really young. And I think there's a couple other things that you said that I was like, wow, I really need to, it really deepened my experience.
Right.
And then later that day, I was sitting out in the sun. My son and a neighbor were running around, and I heard, and I just kind of went like, okay, I really am curious about you. And I heard this part say, I didn't want to share my mom. And I almost like did that like look around thing where I was like, whoa, where did that come from? And so I just wrote it down and like brought that up in therapy later because I was like, whoa, that was amazing. It was amazing.
It's humbling. It is really powerful. Well, that's what we were talking about. I mean, it sounds like at first I was analyzing. We said you don't analyze.
I didn't feel that way to me. It didn't
Okay.
feel analytical to me. It felt like you were sharing. I don't remember exactly what you said, but I remember, I think I wrote it down in my journal because I was like, whatever was happening for me, whatever you said deepened that. And it also gave me clarity. And I didn't feel like you were analyzing it at all. Actually, it felt like you were like,
I didn't feel that way at the time, but as you said, I was thinking, oh, check what that was. But
um,
little critic came up, and that's when it was clear to me once more from that is how much the witnessing continues. It continues with the verbal sharing. It
hmm,
deepens it. It's not kind of an either or. I mean, it's stimulated by the movement,
right.
and then it deepens with the sharing. Can feel even more. That's where you really, it kind of concretizes inside of you that you were seen and understood.
Yeah.
By this, it continues.
Yeah.
And
And
it's like I'm thinking about Janet Adler does this whole discipline about the speaking witness, which is so intricate. I mean, I won't go into it, but I can see why. I mean, it's powerful, how you do that. And
yeah.
I'm just sort of doing it, but it's another layer of that deepening the witnessing experience, being witnessed. There's one other thing about the whole thing, like when I say that feel that there's in especially when I lead a group, there's something, it's about something spiritual
Mm,
because it's sacred when people are really authentically with each other,
mm,
and how we can heal each other and ourselves. I mean, how we heal ourselves through each other, and that has to be God or something. To me,
yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
it's something bigger than that.
Yeah.
That yes, it just feels like that's it. That's which is self energy
Yeah. Right. Mm,
and all of that healing.
mm,
That we're not alone. We're all the same in some way, and we're felt, and we're held, and we're understood by each other.
mm.
Powerful.
Tell everyone about your workshops and how they can find out more about you and what you do.
Well, I wish I had a website. I don't. Um, oops. But maybe during COVID-19, who knows? I might get that together. If they could go to I'm going to give you my email, give them my email.
Right.
They just put the heading on it, authentic movement or AM-IFS, then it won't get lost in the email. And they will be on my mailing list,
Great.
for when I do this again.
Great. Okay. What's your email?
MURIEPE at Verizon.net.
Great. And then the
Facebook page that's moving into self-compassion. I haven't posted on it in a while, and this podcast will probably be on it. But
great.
if they're on Facebook, they can go
Well, and
to.
that's a really easy way for you to give a shout out if you're doing another workshop,
Well,
like
that's right. No, I do.
really easy way. Yeah.
I have a MailChimp account that I get up people on the mailing list, and then that goes also on the Facebook. So that's called
Perfect. So
moving,
what's your Facebook group name again?
moving into self-compassion.
Okay, great. Um, do you want to say anything about the Zoom thing that you and I have been doing and your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so we we started doing. I don't know how I got the smart idea to ask you to do it. I mean, you're good with the technology, and also you do really drop down as much as you think. Like you were so receptive in the workshop, you just sort of really embraced it and dropped. We were so open. I first had a people say, "Oh, do you want to do it online?" And I was like, "No, it's about. I can't do that. It's cold. That's not person to person." I
Yeah.
have to say one of the learnings from this experience is that it forces me, I'm sure everyone, to open up to things that I didn't think I wanted to do, or that I was
Mm,
closed to.
mm.
So
Yeah, one of the gifts of COVID
I,
is, yeah,
I
yeah. Right, so we don't have a choice, right? So it's like if we want to get together and practice this authentic movement IFS together, we have to do it over Zoom. And so, yeah, so you asked me and we got together and I think I did, you moved for 5 minutes and I witnessed, and then we did some processing. And then I took a turn and
right,
moved, and you witnessed, and we did some processing. And we did this over, and plus we chatted and we did this over an hour. And it was incredible. It was incredible. And
so
so we were talking about maybe trying to do that more with a greater amount
right,
of people.
right. So I am playing with that idea, and I do, and if I think that I've got it to a place where it's viable, I will put that out on the Facebook. I will let people know, and
Great.
and if people want to stay interested, then email me about that. But
Yeah,
while
so
yeah,
people email and put a little bit of pressure on her, and then she'll do it.
that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I had one more thought that possibly this came to me after this. I could, if people are living together, I could Zoom witness them witnessing each other and help them and guide them in the process,
Wow.
which I feels very powerful to me because yeah, because they still have the physical presence of each other,
Such a great idea.
and
Yeah.
people really get to feel seen by each other at this time.
Yeah.
You're next to each other, maybe you're not feeling seen even though you're like
Yeah.
seeing too much of each other.
Yeah.
So I think that could be very exciting, healing, and I would love to do that. So if
Yeah.
people, that, yeah, that feels easier to me. But
No.
in fact, Tammy, you in a way helped me. I mean, I asked you to do it, but your receptivity to it, where I was like, okay, I'll try this because I want to offer people something, and I didn't want to be, I don't think of myself as a rigid, closed person, but it turns out I'm seeing those parts. Especially about
Right.
technology. I'm like, yeah, you helped me. I mean, you helped me because your receptivity and your openness just sort of had all those parts fall away.
Good. I'm glad. So the last question I ask people is if you weren't doing all the things that you're doing, you could do something fun and exciting, what would you do?
Well, here, I thought about that, and I would just do what I'm doing. I don't really have
I
that
don't
answer.
like that answer.
I
No,
think,
I want another answer.
okay, well, I think
My 13-year-old's coming out,
okay,
stomping her foot.
you know, oh, well, I could say I would be a dancer or I would be an actor, which I had also kind of studied for. And that's about being witnessed. Hello.
Mm,
And also, it's about, I love an ensemble. I love working with people together and creating something. And I think that this does that too. And I love, like I said, I love being a therapist. I just it's delicious because it's got
mm,
that kind of connection and you're healing and you're present. And I do feel very privileged to have found what I can do, and that it nourishes others and me too. So and I have a dream of of having retreats with the authentic movement and really deepening that work. And so I do actually have a place to do that, maybe in Western Mass next, not, next a year from the summer, but
That's amazing.
so that would be what I would want to be doing too. I don't know.
That's a great answer. I feel very happy. My
Oh,
13-year-old feels happy, and I actually love that answer. That's a good answer.
oh, I'm so glad
Thank
that
you.
your 13-year-old is. I was worried about it because what am I going to say? I love okay, good.
Well, I'm excited to hear more about that, and just to remind people to hit you up on Facebook and send you an email. And yeah, I'm excited to see what else happens. And I want to be a part of it because I love what you do. And it's been so helpful to me personally. And thank you for being on today and just chatting with me. And I'm so glad to be your friend.
Me too. And Tammy, thank you for the podcasts.
No, you're welcome.
They are amazing, and I'm was nervous about being part of it, but I'm humbled and honored, and hope I can contribute something because they are so. I learn from them. That each time I listen, it heals some parts, and you're gifted, and you're giving this gift, and I just feel really appreciative about that. So thank you too.
Thanks for hanging out today. If you like this episode, make sure you subscribe. And if you really like this episode, share it with a friend and leave a review. You can follow me on Instagram at IFS Tammy and join our community on Facebook at the One Inside Podcast. Talk to you next time. Today's episode was sponsored by Brighter Vision. What's the point of having a beautiful website if it doesn't attract the clients you want to see? As the worldwide leaders of website design for therapists, Brighter Vision sees this issue happen way too often. A nice-looking website doesn't equate to a successful website. The truth is, your current website might even be turning off potential clients. That's where Brighter Vision comes in. Brighter Vision's team of website designers will create a website that is centered around attracting and retaining your ideal client so that you can have a nice-looking website as well as a successful one. Better yet, Brighter Vision is offering $100 off exclusively for listeners of the One Inside podcast. To take advantage of this offer, simply go to brightervision.com/inside. Again, that's brightervision.com/inside.